Everyone got fired. Everyone. Michael Malone's gone. Calvin Booth is gone. Complete chaos. Complete carnage. We'll talk about it on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us, making this part of your day, being with us. This is a special break-in episode. We are live on youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets, reacting to the Nuggets firing Michael Malone and Calvin Booth with 11 days before the NBA playoffs begin. Here is what we only know the information from Shams Charania. I checked in with people that did not see this coming. Nobody that I've talked to has saw this coming as of this morning. There are no details available, so I don't know if something happened, if there was an altercation, if the two guys got into a fight and they decided to go ahead and fire them both. I don't know if this has been coming. I don't know the sequence of events. I haven't talked to anybody yet. As predictably, the people that I'm reaching out to are on lockdown. This is what's going to happen in the aftermath of something like this. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll react to breaking news as it comes up here on the stream. I'm sure the folks in the comment section will keep us updated. I'm Matt Moore, senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I write the Denver Dig. Swipe is with us from Swipe at Cam at YouTube, youtube.com/Swipe at Cam. Ryan Blackburn, Mile High Sports, and the Pickaxe and Roll podcast. Yeah, you're muted right now, Ryan. So we'll start right here. This to me, I initially was like, wow, when the Malone news came out, I was like, okay, Booth won the power battle, and then immediately nope. So I'm not surprised, because I thought that if they lost in the first round, which it looked like they were going to, that the decision was going to be, you can't tell the difference. Did they not develop the young talent that Booth wanted? Did they give him too bad of a roster? Why don't we start over completely? So I'm not surprised. I saw on Twitter, I'm surprised, not shocked. The timing is what the timing is. And I talked about this with Taylor Jenkins. If you know that you're not retaining them, and you know that you want to go in a different direction, and you've made that decision, then that's it. Now, there may have been something that happened that changed this, and where it's just like, yeah, fine, you're both gone. We don't know anything about that yet. If that did not happen, then this was simply a matter of, they felt it was time, so they made the move. David Adelman is your interim head coach heading into the playoffs. I do not have word on whether or not Ryan Saunders was retained or not. Let's just go to Cam first. Swipa, what's your reaction to this?
Yeah, well, number one, I want to obviously thank Michael Malone for everything that he's done for the organization. He's the winningest and best coach in organization history. I think also, too, with Calvin Booth, he obviously helped win the championship for the team. They deserve a lot of credit and respect for that. But I'm obviously shocked. Calvin Booth, we talked about this since last year, because of some of the decisions that he's made, things we heard behind the scenes. I am not surprised by this. I did not expect it to happen at this point in time, but did figure that this summer this would be something that would happen. Michael Malone, I am genuinely surprised about the timing, and especially given the fact that we have not yet reached the playoff. We don't know how the series we're going to go in the first, second, third, or championship round. But nonetheless, the Denver Nuggets, after a 4-game losing streak, the first since 2023, their defense has fallen off a cliff. He's basically said out loud that I've tried to provide all the answers possible, but the players are not adjusting and are not listening. So ownership, the Kroenkes, decided that they wanted to clean house from top to bottom, from Calvin Booth to Michael Malone, to get new blood into the building. So shocked, especially for someone who's been with the organization since 2014 and has led this team to the heights that has led it to. He was one of 4 of the coaches that have been tenured for this long, with 10 years on a team and a championship. So all those things put together, this is shocking, but this is the new NBA. Taylor Jenkins, just a week ago, was relieved of duties after being one of the winningest coaches in the history of the Memphis Grizzlies. And here we are, the winningest coach in Denver Nuggets history, Michael Malone, fired before the NBA playoffs.
Yeah. Hang on. Statement from KSE. Statement from Josh Kroenke, vice chairman of KSE. Is with no pleasure that we announce that we've relieved Michael Malone of his head coaching duties effective immediately. David Adelman will assume our head coaching role for the remainder of the 24-25 season. Decision was not made lightly and was evaluated very carefully, and we only do so with the intention of giving our group the best chance of competing for the 2025 championship and delivering another title to Denver and our fans everywhere. He means, and for Jokic. With the timing of this decision is unfortunate, as Coach Malone helped build the foundation of our now championship level program. It is a necessary step to allow us to compete at the highest level right now. Championship level standards and expectations remain in place for the current season. And as we look to the future, we look forward to building on the foundations laid by Coach Malone over his record-breaking 10-year career in Denver. There is no amount of gratitude we can properly convey to his contributions since he joined our franchise in 2015. It is with our utmost respect that we would like to thank Coach Malone for the most successful decade in Nuggets history, setting the all-time win record and helping deliver Denver our first championship. Point of order, they are not firing Calvin Booth. They are not renewing his contract. I want to thank Calvin Booth for leading our front office for the past 3 years, and more importantly, for helping put the final pieces in place for the roster that delivered Denver and our fans the first NBA championship. Calvin's knowledge of the game, his passion for scouting, and his long history as a player and executive in the NBA helped lift our organization to new heights, which we will continue moving forward. We are grateful to Calvin for his 8 years with the Nuggets and know his place in Nuggets history as our first championship winning GM will be honored for years to come. Ryan.
Well, Shams also came out with a follow-up tweet. This is tied for the latest coaching change in NBA history per ESPN research, matching Hubie Brown in 1980-81. So this is a big deal. Of course, this is a shocker based off of the timing. It is not a shocker for those that read the newsletter that I put out this morning that was basically like, hey, what happens if the Nuggets fail? And the two most important things that I wrote in there was that they will look at Michael Malone. His job is not safe. They will probably not bring back Calvin Booth. His job is not either. And the Nuggets, and I said this at the beginning of the year, that things had potential to be a disaster because of where things were going, unfortunately. And there's just a lot of pressure that when you stay stagnant, when you hold on for too long, it's like a soda bottle that you've shaken up a little bit, and the pressure is just going to build over time. And the pressure is built. It's been building internally. And earlier this week, I had also heard that higher ups at KSE were starting to feel sincere pressure about where this season was supposed to go, where it needed to go. And so I'm not surprised overall that this has happened. This is an unfortunate way. You could tell by the statements, like Michael Malone meant a lot to this organization. He meant a lot to this team. That was a lot of words there. And I will be sad to see him go, just overall.
Hey, I'm just glad that everybody got what they wanted. That's finally all the folks that have wanted this for years finally got what they wanted. Michael Malone is the best coach in Nuggets history, hands down. He's been one of the best coaches. Look, that guy wins press conferences is what he does. Yeah. And Michael was not he's not always the most pleasant person to be around because he was obsessed with winning. I will tell you this, no coach I have covered, very few coaches I have covered have ever cared more about winning, losing, and the business of basketball than Michael Malone. He cared about developing talent. He cared about building relationships. He cared about winning games. He cared about protecting legacies. He cared about doing the best job that he could. Year over year, I would ask him about his process, and he would talk about how he went into trying to be a better coach each and every year. That's why they went over their win total every single season until this one. If you want to know who got Michael Malone fired, you could say that it was Calvin Booth with putting the roster together. It was the players. The players got Michael Malone fired. And you could say that's because of his lack of coaching, and that's what happened. But this is when Malone told us last month, when he said, I've said that over and over again, and I honestly don't know what to tell you. That was when I started to be, I really was like, yeah, he's not going to last. Because once you're literally like, I don't know what else to do. He's always had a trick or two to pull out to be able to accomplish what he needed to do with this team. He's always been able to be like, I backed off. The team's too tight. Let's go out for a bowling night. The team is too loose. We're having practice. He's always managed that, and he's gotten the results from them. He turned Michael Porter Jr. into a capable enough defender to win the NBA title. That's one of the most amazing coaching jobs ever. And now, but unfortunately, they just do not have it. They did not have the horses. They did not have the wagon. We'll talk about Calvin in a minute. Malone's legacy here. You could talk about how being a Jokic merchant, he doesn't get the opportunity under a lot of coaches. Under any other coach? No, other coaches would have identified him. A lot of coaches would have been like, I don't want the soft Euro that is out of shape. I don't want him playing, including one that coaches in Texas. Would never, ever have gotten that opportunity under certain coaches. And Malone recognized it, encouraged it, developed it, worked with him, and he got better because of the staff and program that Malone put together. Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, on and on and on. These guys all benefited from the work that Michael Malone put in. And it sucks. Let's deal with the timing of it, because that's going to be everybody's question. Like, coaches get fired, and that's what happened. By the way, I'm getting like a barrage of texts that are everyone being like, what the like, everybody is just texting me being like, can you explain this? And I'm kind of like, you were expected to compete for a championship, and they're not competing for a championship. And we've been talking, like, it's tough, right? Because like the three of us have been talking about this on Locked On Nuggets for 6 months, and we're like, they're not competing for a championship. And once you get there, it changes the equation. Swipa, do you agree with them making this move 11 days before the playoffs begin and not riding the season out to at least see what could happen?
Personally, no, but I think some of this is the free fall that has been the Denver Nuggets engagement has been a part of the problem. And then obviously, there are some videos, some skirmishes on the sideline, but that to me doesn't mean anything that happens in competitive environments all the time. But I think the fact that the team has looked this discombobulated on the defensive end to where they're not executing simple schemes like playing at the level or drop coverage like they have in previous iterations of the team. And I think when you have those kind of breakdowns, that obviously is going to add a lot of pressure to the head coach. And then for him to come out, again, I think him, as he always is, which is why we love Michael Malone, him being as forthcoming about what's happening with the team as he was, that probably did not play well in terms of how management was viewing some of those comments that were being made. But of course, I'm shocked by the timing, given that this is the same team that was told last summer can compete for a championship this year. They're still on pace to possibly win 50 games, and they're currently sitting in the 4 seed. And now, right before the playoffs start next week, he's being relieved of his duties. And this is the only coach that Nikola Jokic has ever known in the NBA. Jamal Murray has ever known in the NBA. Michael Porter Jr. has ever known in the NBA. Like, he is a legacy piece in the Denver Nuggets. You will not be able to tell the story about the Denver Nuggets without telling the story of Michael Malone. That's how prominent he is within this organization, but also that's, I think, what he means. I mean, despite all the trolls, Matt, I think if you survey a lot of fans just around the state of Colorado or the Nuggets in whole, he is loved because he has been the one backing his guys since the start of his tenure. He believed in Jamal Murray when he started his career off, not making a shot through the first 3 games. He believed him in 2018-19 playoff when he wasn't playing well in the first round and kept him in the game and kept him going. So, like, there are so many points about his legacy and his tenure in Denver that make him the GOAT coach in this organization's history. So it does suck, I think, personally for me, just because Michael Malone was such a great coach and such a great representative of the team.
Ryan, the timing of it, do you agree with that sequence of it? And then I want to get into a pretty tough hypothetical. Go ahead.
No, I will never agree to making the most aggressive firing before the playoffs in NBA history. No, I'm just never going to do that. I think that if they wanted to let go of Booth, so be it. Usually those things don't happen until the offseason, but like, I think all of us could see the writing on the wall there based off of what's happened over the last calendar year. But letting go of Michael Malone, that's a tough one because maybe they just didn't think that they could let go of one and not the other, given that they thought that he wasn't the answer. And honestly, I mean, you talked about this with the Taylor Jenkins firing when we were discussing Zach Kleiman, another one who should probably be gone. That sometimes you just make a decision, and if you feel conviction in your decision, then you shouldn't delay and you should just make it happen. And maybe that's just how the players and everybody around the organization felt, that Malone wasn't the guy to get them through these playoffs. I find a hard time to believe that personally, because he's helped them win a championship already, like navigated those waters already. And they were up 20 in Game 7 last year against the Minnesota Timberwolves and probably could have won that series. And if they win that series, who knows? So it does feel pretty abrupt. I do not like the timing of it. I'll never like the timing of this one.
Okay, so here's a very simple question. By the way, according to source, no decisions have been made on any other front office personnel. So Tommy Balchetis, everyone in the scouting department, everyone else, there's not been a decision made. Only Calvin Booth. Again, Calvin was not fired. They are just not renewing his contract. So he's out. Because it saved them some money. Swipa, let's go here. and I think I know the answer to this from you, so you can be pretty sweet because you've made your thoughts clear throughout the year, and I don't disagree with them. If Calvin Booth builds him a better roster, is Michael Malone still the head coach of the Nuggets?
I personally believe so. I think that in Matt, you can probably speak to this. Your tenure in the NBA is longer than mine. I do think that there is a fallout effect of not having the adequate pieces to cover up shortcomings, and that when you already are deficient as you are on a defensive end or with your shooting, because you heard directly from Calvin Booth last summer, Matt, we had this conversation. 9 real guys. Nikola Jokic should not lose in a series because of a 3-point battle. There was a direct comment about the 3-point deficiencies of the team and the roster. He also then said, if we're struggling with the shooting, we'll be willing, based on the cap space we created, to make adjustments and add a player if need be. None of those things happened. The math game ended up failing. And then on top of that, the plan to build around the young guys on the bench also hasn't worked. And then on top of that, the defense is taking a step back. And Matt, I think that the players have felt this pressure all year. And I think that because they're already so deficient, and I think it's had a fallout to the players not being able or even willing at this point to do some of the things they traditionally have done, which is even just cover up a basic scheme. So I do think that if Michael Malone was given adequate defensive personnel or additional shooters on this team that you need in order to perform at a high level, he would still be here. But Matt, here's the other thing. Just like you have other people in the media and other people you know that like the team, watch the team, people have been asking me questions all year about the defensive personnel, the lack of shooters. Are they sure they want to do this? They're already putting a non-shooting unit out there with Westbrook, with AG, with Peyton Watson, with Christian Brown. How are they going to manufacture enough offense when it matters the most in the playoffs to be able to win at a high level? And we've seen all year they've made tremendous adjustments to what they've done based on their personnel. I do think that if Calvin Booth had done a better job giving Michael Malone adequate talent, that the team would look better. And I think Michael Malone will still have his job. But what say you?
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, we'll get Ryan's thoughts on that as well as mine. We'll continue to react to this news. If one of you guys can go in and adjust the background to add in the David Adelman, the interim head coach, getting a lot of questions about that from the 2,400 folks now currently watching us at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate subject to change. 3% match includes Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18, 2024. Robinhood Gold Financial LLC. Member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day. I appreciate you guys being with us as we react to the news of Michael Malone, Calvin Booth, both being relieved of duties by the Denver Nuggets. Ryan, your thoughts on whether or not if Calvin Booth had built a better, more veteran roster, if Michael Malone is still the head coach of the Nuggets?
Duh. Like, this is pretty simple, I think. It's not really a laughing matter at this point because now Denver's in turmoil and things are going to get really uncomfortable really quickly. They already have been, but yeah, I just think that at this stage, we knew the issues going into the season. We knew that there were going to be problems. Cam, I think, highlighted it perfectly reasonably. This is going to be one of those things that's it's a chicken or an egg thing. Like, if you're a better coach, do you develop the players that are already there? Do you make chicken salad out of chicken crap? Do you put those guys into a better position where they find more opportunities to be better defensively? I was saying before the season that I thought that Denver could be a pretty good defensive roster. I thought that they had a chance to be better defensively than they were offensively. Clearly, that was entirely misguided, as we saw and as we have seen the team kind of fizzle. I think that Denver has been going through a lot of changes behind the scenes, just in terms of who they are as a team. I think they have put too much reliance on Nikola Jokic and on outscoring opponents on a consistent basis. And if they didn't have to do that, then you wouldn't see as much stress being placed off of every individual member within the team. The Dario Saric signing was a bust. The ability to maneuver or not maneuver around the trade deadline was entirely made by Calvin Booth and the second tax apron. The Kroenkes, I think, should hold some blame in this for not demanding that they re-sign Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and just let him go in free agency, because that's how you just lose value to a roster. They lost KCP and did not replace him. They replaced him internally and tried to elevate Christian Braun, and Christian Braun has performed admirably in that task over the course of much of this season. But as we've seen, he is a flawed player when asked to play 2,500 minutes in a season. So I think that Denver's just in a really tough place, Matt. I really do.
No assistants have been no other assistants have been let go. So Ryan Saunders will remain in charge of the defense. David Adelman, who has coached the offense, will take over as interim head coach. Adelman has had a lot of interest. The Portland Trailblazers are a team that I know have had their eye on David Adelman as a potential head coaching candidate should they let go of Chauncey Billups this summer. Which, by the way, maybe that's going to be a potential hire for the Denver Nuggets. You know, bring Chauncey home, I guess. There's not a lot of, like I said, we don't know what the direction is going to be. If they make a playoff run, if they make an unexpected playoff run, then sure, we can talk about like the possibility of David Adelman being retained. That's entirely possible. But Stan Kroenke in his history tends to go very high level. And that to me is like what is very likely to occur here. So I think that this is probably going to be a top-down decision. There's a lot of conversation about Mike Budenholzer possibly being let go in Phoenix. I don't love that fit from a personnel standpoint with how Bud runs his scheme. He is an extremely effective coach, and maybe he comes in with a plan to change up and work around Jokic's specific skill set as far as defensively. But I do have some questions about that. Frank Vogel is another name that I would probably keep an eye on as a potential hire. Stan Kroenke will call Mike D'Antoni, who's been retired for like years and years and years. Like that call will be made. And I don't think that Mike D'Antoni's wife will allow him to go back to coaching. I don't think that will happen. I think Mike's past that point in his life. But Stan's wanted to hire Mike D'Antoni for ever. And so that will be another concept. It'll be probably a coach with that kind of mindset. I would expect some other potential options are going to be coaches probably with the Bucks, the Celtics, and the Cavaliers potentially being options for those hires. Sam Cassell is probably the highest name free agent or assistant coach I would look at there. But that's if David Adelman isn't given the full-time job, because the players have loved David Adelman. They've had a lot of confidence in him. I guess my question in the interim is like, they said that they made this move with still an intention to try and compete for the 2025 championship. I'm not going to rule it out because I just don't think that we can really rule out anything. But what is your thought on how the Nuggets can compete here before we take another break?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I think removing a centerpiece like that and then expecting everything just to flow, I think that's very unrealistic. And I think unless there was something that the players were completely fed up with Malone and Booth, and now the dark cloud of Malone and Booth has just lifted a defensive veil off of this team, and all of a sudden David Adelman has them playing defense at the level they did in 2023, then yeah, sure, maybe they could. But Jamal Murray, there's still questions about him and his availability at the start of the playoffs. They're still one of the worst defenses in the league since January 1st and have had one good stretch of defense the entire season. Does that change with David Adelman? All of that stuff, I think, is they're in a situation now where they're going to try and they're going to do their best. But I just don't think that this is a fair ask of the players to lose a head coach in this situation and then to try to just walk in and just get it done. But again, David Adelman's a very good coach, and maybe he does make the proper adjustments. And also, too, Matt, maybe now this is the kick in the butt that the team needed, and they just needed to be realigned to reality that you cannot just walk your way through basketball games, and now you have to actually engage on both ends of the court. But realistically, that's probably not going to happen.
There's been disagreements. I'll say this. There's been disagreements with the team, with the players. They've been frustrated with some of the scheme stuff defensively. So I don't necessarily think that this is like a top-down like Malone was the only thing here. I actually think that this is a lot of scapegoating between above and below. But yeah, I think that's to me is probably like worth consideration. Ryan, what are your thoughts on David Adelman taking over as a interim head coach?
Well, he's been close to getting head coaches jobs before. He has been somebody that the Nuggets have trusted with the offense, and the offense is still really good this year overall, despite the fact that it is very Jokic reliant. If I were David Adelman, I would also be very Jokic reliant. But guys like Peyton Watson and Russell Westbrook and Christian Brown have each made mentions of David Adelman and the work that he does. Jamal Murray has said similar things, that he's just somebody who they believe in and have believed in for the offense, and know that he's trying to do the right thing and that putting the guys into a position to succeed. Denver, in prior times where David Adelman has taken over as the interim head coach, have had both good moments and bad moments. I won't say that they are like perfectly 100% in the times where he has taken over from Michael Malone. I think that the Nuggets will have to go through some growing pains with him. He will be in a very tough situation almost immediately. This is about as tough of a situation as you could possibly want if you are an interim coach taking over for a team that has extremely high expectations and a team that cannot play any defense. So good luck. Not really full of high hopes and expectations here, but would love to see him succeed. He is a legacy guy. Rick Adelman, obviously a legend in the NBA and a legend with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So there's going to be some opportunities here for David Adelman to prove himself. And if he can have a good playoff run, then maybe the Nuggets decide to keep him and continue with him. I kind of doubt that, though. I think that this will be a temporary thing.
A lot of conversation inside the comments about Jokic's role here. We'll get to that coming up on Locked On Nuggets. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health, but traditional in-person therapy can be expensive, often ranging from $100 to $250 per session. That's where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense, saving you time and money. Therapy isn't just for life's toughest moments. It can help with everyday stress, learning how to set boundaries, or developing positive coping skills. Having access to support when you need it can make a big difference. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. A couple comments and I want to get to, or there's commenters in the comments, and it's fine. Like it's okay to be casual NBA fans and wonder these things. We got lots of folks joining us on the 2,900 now, people watching this live. That are probably like, is Jokic gone? Is Jokic going to get traded? Because that's how the NBA works. From my perspective, that's a 0-point chance possibility. Stan Kroenke and Josh Kroenke understand that Jokic is the best player in franchise history. And as far as I know right now, Nico Harrison's not running the team. So to me, there is a 0% chance that Nikola Jokic is getting traded. The question, I think, is, was Nikola Jokic consulted on this move to fire Michael Malone and Calvin Booth? Do I think that probably that they at least offered to get his input? Yes. I will tell you that I do not believe in my heart of hearts that Nikola Jokic thinks of things in terms of saying, yes, I think it's time for us to make a move. Yes, you need to do this. I would be in favor of this. I think Jokic's answer would be like, that's not my decision. That's yours. I play basketball. That's my job. My job is to listen to the coach and do what the coach's plan is.
Even in this context, you think?
Do what?
Even in the context, you think, with having a relationship?
So. I just simply don't believe that he's going to. I don't believe he was. I believe he was consulted. I don't believe that he gave sign off or approval or a decision. Now I could be wrong. That is a speculative call on my part, based off of the history of covering Nikola Jokic up close and personal for a decade. That's where I'm at. What do you think, Swipa?
Look, I don't believe in NBA that you have a generational player in his prime and then you don't talk to them. So I think he obviously was talked to. The Kroenkes, I know, speak very highly of him. I know Calvin Booth had noted that Jokic is good about staying in his role as a player last year in the offseason. That was comments that were made. And so Jokic obviously does like to stay in his lane. I don't think that he would sign off on Malone being fired. But I do think to a degree was if that's what you feel is the best decision for the team, then that's what we will do. So I do think, Matt, to that point, based on everything that I know about him, that's probably more than likely will happen. But Jokic has also been extremely frustrated this year. And I think we've all noted that, and especially as of late. There's multiple video of him on the sideline being frustrated with things that are happening on the court. I think he's been very frustrated with the roster, with who's around him. And even if that's not something he will directly communicate, it seems to be rather clear that he feels that there are deficiencies across the team. And so much so, in the offseason, when he knew they weren't going to have shooting, he then said, then let me take on the responsibility of becoming an elite shooter. And I think some of this is Jokic is aware, but Jokic wants to stay in his lane. But I do think he was notified. But the thing is the Cronkies, to your 0% probability, they know that Jokic is the centerpiece of the team and of the organization, and that is their responsibility is to make sure that he's in the best place possible. So I definitely think he was consulted.
Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I mean, he has to be consulted to me. Like it would be shocking if they didn't. It would be shocking if this was a decision that Josh Kroenke or Stan Kroenke decided to make. Taking both of those guys into his office and firing them without letting anybody know. I got to imagine that, like we kind of talked about this a little bit. A lot of what this upcoming offseason was supposed to be, just kind of taking it out of context of this current firing. A lot of what this should have been with Josh Kroenke was sitting down with Nikola Jokic before he goes back to Sombor this summer and saying, "Hey, what do you actually want, man? Like what do you want? How do we put this into perspective? What can we do to keep you, not just keep you happy, but like to keep making good decisions and being a champion and doing what it takes?" And Matt, you might be right that he could kind of wave that off and say, "I don't know, it's not my job to do that." But I kind of think that he's a little bit more Americanized in that way of late, that he has been kind of taking on some of those mannerisms and taking a little bit more ownership of the situation. And like when you have as much pressure on you as he has, which, let's face it, is more pressure than anybody in the NBA outside of LeBron James right now. I think that the spotlight does fall on you to kind of take some ownership in those decisions and not just be dust in the wind, a leaf being blown around, and say, "Hey, whatever happens around me just happens."
Okay. So to me, I can't look positively upon the possibility of this run for them.
Yeah.
I just don't think, there might be a bump. Like, I'm not ruling it out. I am at the point in the NBA where it's just like, I don't know how to predict the plot twists. If you told me that Malone was going to get fired this season, I would have been like, yeah, that's possible. It's absolutely possible. 100%. Like we said, coming into the year, I was like, man, if they start 2-10, he's gone. Like he might get fired before he breaks the record.
Right.
But is the 4 seed bad? Like,
they're tied with the 8th seed. So like, it is bad.
Sure, but they're the 4 seed, Ryan. Like that was the exact spot that the Memphis Grizzlies were in when they got fired. I understand.
We could have woken up tomorrow and they would have been the 7 seed.
I understand.
But the results thing is not what the team is, though. Matt, because we talked about this multiple times. Like, it's the way they played this year. That's the actual issue.
Sure.
Record.
Yeah, for sure.
If they would have played, would you agree if they would have played differently, harder this year, and just had lost those games? Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
and like the idea is that like the professional athletes needed somebody to get them motivated, as if this is like, I don't know, like cheer camp. I don't understand it. We're gonna take a break. We're gonna jump to another episode. So there's gonna be another YouTube that we're gonna do. Well, no, let's stay here. Let's stay here for the YouTube. We're gonna stay live. We'll break this into 2 episodes, but I'm gonna restart the episode for us to do for the podcast. The podcast will be in 2 parts. Stay with us here on Locked On Nuggets. Welcome back to Locked On Nuggets. This is part 2 of our conversation on the firing of Michael Malone. And Calvin Booth and the chaos and everything. Ryan, take the reins here for a minute. Tell me what you think is like the next like biggest question that we have here.
Well, I'm still waking up, man. Like it's unfortunate. I was taking a nap when I get this call from Cam, and he says, "Hey, did you see the news?" No, I did not. So this is everybody that's saying, "Look at the defeat on their faces." Like, no, I'm just tired, man.
A guy got fired. Man, hang on. a guy got fired. He's got two girls, man.
Yeah,
he's got a wife. He has lived
undefeated.
here for a decade. Like, have a little bit, just like a fraction of humanity, you ghouls.
Yeah.
Swipe us since Ryan is sleepy time.
What do you think is like the best?
What do you think? What do you think is like the biggest like next? What's like your next question here?
Yeah, to let Ryan, I know, accumulate his thoughts, because he's obviously, you know, he will have a lot of thoughts about this all day, especially as we are on the phone more. Matt, I mean, it's simple as this. This is the NBA, and the question doesn't matter. You know, when they moved to the Phil Jackson era with the Bulls, with the Lakers, it was always about who's the best player on the roster. And it's like, okay, what happens now with Joker? What happens now with Jordan? What happens now with Shaq? What happens now with LeBron, with David Blatt and Mike Brown? I mean, at this juncture, it's are they going to actually prioritize? To me, actually prioritize doing the most earnest possible job to make sure that the rest of the prime Jokic years are surrounded by the most talent possible? For me, that's the next question, because I think if you're going into an interview with the Denver Nuggets for the GM position or head coaching position, at the top of line one, Ryan, how are you going to maximize Nikola Jokic? Who do you need on the roster to maximize Nikola Jokic? What needs to be done to put this team back in consistent contention for a title for the next several seasons? And that should be, for me, the perspective. How are you going to get the team where it needs to be? How are you going to make sure the shortcomings are covered? And how do you really lift up the strengths of the roster and what you have, the things that are good already? And then the next question goes to everything else. Jamal Murray, contract injuries. Michael Porter Jr., contract, what's next? Aaron Gordon, recent injury this year, contract, what are we doing there? Are we good enough at the 2 guard? Are we good enough at the bench? And if the answer is, Ryan, on any of those things, no, we are not good enough, then for me, that determines every step from here through the summer into next season, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, obviously, how they handle it. The playoffs will affect a little bit of it. If the Lakers if Jamal Murray gets back and they play and he looks pretty good and everything feels like they're in a pretty good spot, then like maybe he comes back and maybe they can still find a way to make it happen. But if you're, like we've talked about this, they're probably going to break up the core 4. Like that's just Say it again.
I say, oh yeah, you're up 100%. Yep.
Yeah, like we've been on this. They have not been good enough as a core 4 this year, and part of the reason why you pay 4 guys that much money is because they are the best 4-man group in basketball, and they have not been the best 4-man group in basketball, at least over the course of the last 2 seasons. Last year, it was because Murray was not good enough just in general, although he had a good regular season. Then in the playoffs, there were some factors that pulled each of them apart. This year, overall, like Jokic has been great, but the defense has been bad. All 3 of the other guys have had good segments of the season and bad segments of the season. I'll say that. And the consistency just has not been there. So that's the next step, is to figure out not just who's the coach, not just who's the GM making the decisions, but which of the guys do you feel like can be the next part of your championship future? And I don't know the answer to that. I think there could be a combination of any 1, 2, or all 3 of them that are gone if things go the way that we think they do in the playoffs.
I will reiterate that we're reacting to this live in the aftermath of the news that they've been fired. And I want to reiterate that there's possibility of like other stories coming out. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see like who gets that news now, because Woj was Josh's guy. So I don't know where that news goes now. Probably I would assume Shams, but we'll see what happens. I'm at a loss. But man, I am in agreement with the both of you that like if you're you shouldn't fire Malone because of the roster, and also if you're gonna fire him, don't fire him 2 weeks before the playoffs start. Like this seems, and I mean, look, it does reflect an urgency, which I think is what the Cronkies wanted to assert. Is like, the shepherding of Jokic's legacy is a big talking point. And to me, this is like illustrative of like, yeah, we do take it so seriously. We're going to fire our GM and head coach with 4 days left in the NBA regular season.
Matt, do you think because that point you brought up right there, do you think that because that point has been brought up at the national level as frequent as it has been in the last 2 months, do you think that has did you think this move accelerated the timeline of this a little bit?
Say that to me again.
So ESPN on NBA Today, first things first, Kevin Wildes, Chris Broussard, and Nick Wright last week. And then you got Ryan Russillo and Bill Simmons. All of them in the last month have said the Nuggets are wasting Jokic's prime. The team isn't good enough.
Yeah.
They're not appreciating him enough. He having the best season ever, and it doesn't matter, and they're still losing. When are you going to get some help? And then even as of yesterday, it was Kendrick Perkins on NBA Today that basically said, when are you going to take accountability, Coach Malone? So this all in the last month has reached its apex. So do you think the national conversation maybe sped the timeline up a little bit as well?
Yes. I will also ask this question. If Russ doesn't foul on NAW, or if they don't call that foul, that nonsense foul, like Malone might still be here. Very seriously. They put everything into that Wolves game, and they came up short in a 60-10-10 performance. The next night, they have to rest everybody because it's a back-to-back and they're all gassed. They go on the road and they put a lot into that Warriors game and they get outclassed. Like that was probably it. The Pacers game, it's crazy. It's like the first 4-game losing streak since 2023. And he gets fired basically because of it. I understand. I will say this in defense of the move for everybody, because there are a lot of fans that didn't genuinely wanted Malone gone. I do think like it's been 10 years. It's been a decade, and it is hard to maintain that voice. Now, do I think that my thing as always is I don't know if you're going to be better after it. I just don't. I don't know if you hire the best coaching hires to me are always taking chances on assistant coaches that have new ideas. Like that to me is always like the best thing to do from a coaching standpoint.
Well, yeah.
But you can't do that with a team that's expected to win a championship. You can't put a first-time head coach in like with the expectation of he's going to have to figure out adjustments in Game 6 of the conference finals.
Joe Mazzulla? Well, you're talking about that the same year.
Yeah, and also like Joe Mazzulla came up with an equation that says 3 is greater than 2. Congratulations. But like,
I mean, that's a coaching adjustment though. I think he did his job, but I think to your point, it's a rarity. It is a rarity to step in those situations like that.
So like Frank Vogel actually was an interim coach.
Right.
Vogel took over for the Pacers and for PJ Carlesimo, and when he took over, like it was very evident, like, oh man, Vogel's like the guy. And that might happen with David Adelman here, where it's like, man, like his adjustments are amazing. And like I've said, they needed some reinvention, and I do. I think they needed some fresh blood and some fresh voices. I thought that could have happened with the assistant coaches. I thought that if they didn't fire Malone, which we've been talking about, like we have been very clear. And like I said this week in an article that on the Denver Dig, I was like, if they lose in the first round, Malone's gone. Like there was no getting around it. This move to me is like, we expect to either not make the playoffs by losing in the play-in, or we expect to lose in the first round. And we are trying to course correct out of that. And maybe Adelman does it, right? Like maybe Adelman and maybe Malone, there were certain things that Ryan Saunders couldn't do because Malone didn't want them. I personally don't buy that, but that's entirely possible. I will tell you that I want to talk about the organization. I want to talk about culture. Can we talk about that? Is that like an okay transition here, Ryan? Do you want to add on to something about that?
Fun.
The Nuggets culture for the last year has been toxic. It was so good in 2022 and 2023. Like it was great under Tim Conley, and it was great that first year with Calvin. There has been a lot of problems with the front office and the culture. Calvin Booth not having an extension and not liking, like he did not agree to the extension. There was one offered that he did not agree to. And that resulted in a fractious front office. There, for the first time since before 2000 and before the Jokic era, was the last time I remember this. There were multiple factions in the Nuggets front office. The number one goal for whatever they do with the front office is to get everybody back in a secure spot where everybody's taken care of money-wise. It is hard when you don't know if you're going to have a job next year, and you don't know if your coworker is going to have a job next year. And that trickles to the players. I don't know how. It does, though. I've seen it happen over and over and over again.
Of course, yeah.
There was too much uncertainty with the direction of this franchise from a front office level. And some of that is on Josh Kroenke, because he should have decided either, like, again, this is a KSE thing that has always driven me nuts. Don't have lame ducks. He's your guy or he's not your guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done this before and it's caused problems. So that to me is like step one, Ryan. They got to get a front office that is back under one leadership with everybody in line and everybody locked in, and where everybody wants to come to work. That's got to be step one for the organization.
There are still people that come up to me and tell me their tale about how not everybody got a ring around the organization for the work that they did in 2023. The players got a ring, front office got a ring, coaches got a ring, and you go tangentially around the organization a little bit, and some people were pretty miffed about that, given the work that everybody's done, especially those that have been around.
And to be clear, just for context, when the Denver Broncos won in 2015, there were interns that got Super Bowl rings with the Denver Broncos at that point in time. Just for context.
Yes. So like it's a big deal. It's a big deal to be a part of a winning organization, to be part of a team that climbs the mountaintop for the first time in NBA history. And then there are those around you that don't really acknowledge and fully appreciate what you've done. And a lot of people didn't feel appreciated. A lot of people felt like there were aspects of this team that were not fully unified anymore. That's one thing, rightly or wrongly, about Calvin Booth, that Tim Connelly just did better. Like he was just better at that aspect of the job, kind of bringing people together, making sure everybody felt like they're on top of the world, and giving them a voice and giving them an opportunity to have their own time to shine. Like that was actually one of Tim's central tenets, is that if he has told several folks, if I did not draft Nikola Jokic, I'd probably still be a lead scout somewhere. He loves to give credit out to other people. He loves to give that. And like, this is an opportunity for, I think, the Nuggets to reinvent themselves a little bit, to hopefully circle back around to what matters most. And that is to be unified, as you mentioned, Matt. I totally agree there. I don't know who it's going to be. There's going to be a lot of names that pile out there. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to talk about different names. Maybe the Nuggets already have a name in the ideas box, but we'll see.
We are past being coy. There's a lot of ideas about Tim Connelly returning this summer. Now, I think that probably the success of Mark Lore and Alex Rodriguez in securing full ownership of the Minnesota Timberwolves changes that, because that ensures that Connelly's deal will be held up. There won't be any sort of escape clauses probably executed from that perspective. They were the ones, Mark Lore was the one that put together that deal for Tim Connelly, and that's a lot of money to walk away from. But if that situation were to go in a different direction, I do think that Tim would absolutely want to come back if fences were mended after how that dissolution came about.
Matt, do you and Ryan, but Matt, because you've been here longer than all of us, and obviously especially me, I'm still a very newcomer in this space. You know, you said the time for being coy is we're past that. So I agree. Do you believe that ownership is ready to accept responsibility in what happened as well? And the reason I asked that is, and I hope so, they are the ones that hired Calvin Booth. They're the ones that empowered Calvin Booth. They are also the ones that allowed for the last 2 years to take place. And some of this goes back to the KCP contract. I have heard different things surrounding the offer, the not offer, the whatever else it was, the noise around KCP, the strategy to develop around second round and late round first pick rookies as your kind of linchpin into the future for Denver. The idea of not really going after free agents with the money that you had available, like just any of that stuff, like just even from the SAR signing to the way that the Russ thing, all of it. I mean, there's so many layers. The Hunter Tyson getting a fully guaranteed spot, Jalen Pickett getting a fully guaranteed spot, not re-signing Justin. They don't have bodies. So the issue is like the team doesn't have the necessary depth to compete at the level it once did. And we have all said this all year. Now, Calvin Booth was the one orchestrating that, but they were also the ones that were kind of allowing for the things to exist within the organization, even the disdain that existed between Booth and between Malone that we all know started really ramping up last summer when everything went down, when there were reports coming out of ESPN about some of the stuff that was happening. And so, Matt, is one, you believe the ownership is ready to accept responsibility, but are they ready to do the things you need to do in this NBA to win? And some of this goes back to even just the math stuff you and I talk about all the time, just from a philosophical standpoint, like getting with the times in some way, because in truth, their offense is antiquated. The defense also is obviously not good. Like, do you believe that the organization is ready to step forward?
Well, two things. This move indicates that they are, okay,
Sure.
because they are spending money unwillingly on Michael Malone on the rest of his contract.
Mm-hmm.
So that step one is like that's pulling teeth. Step two, I think, is they didn't just do this. This wasn't just like we're going to scapegoat Malone and fire him. By cleaning house, you're saying the entire thing is unacceptable and we have to reconsider it. Mm-hmm. Now, I will tell you, like, I think the math thing is going to be tough, man, because Jokic doesn't think of the game that way. Like, if you ask Jokic, like, hey, do you need to be able to take 3-pointers in this league? Jokic would be like, no. So, like, sorry, some of this is just like, it is just very indicative of like the realities of how Jokic kind of looks at the game. You're going to want to find that. And I will say, this is going to be a challenge. You have to find a GM and a coach who are going to get Nikola in the way that Malone did. And you're going to say, like, there's going to be this idea of like, well, Malone didn't get Jokic at all because he's like such a rough and tumble guy from Queens. Malone understood Jokic. Like they are not the same, but he understood him and he empowered Jokic a lot. Yeah, to become what he was. And you can say like Jokic was always going to be this good. Fine, he didn't get in the way. And other coaches with other great stars have gotten in the way before. And you have to make sure that you navigate that part of this dynamic as well. When you're talking about a front office, you're going to want to like that. To me, honestly, they'll swipe. But that's the thing is you can't hire a GM for Jokic. Like you have to hire a GM with his look at like the gold needs a lot more investment. Like they just need to have a stronger G League program, but you also need a GM that's like, I want flexibility. That's my biggest thing is I want flexibility. We have to be able to flip in parts around Jokic. If it's not working, I have to be able to pivot, because what Calvin did is Calvin locked in on his guys, on Jalen Pickett having a great season, Zeke Naji, Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, Tyson Hunter, Deron Holmes would have been one of those guys. He locked in on those guys and gave guaranteed deals that meant that when it was like, you have to get a veteran wing, they did not have the potential to get there. And
then to that, then also the player options to the other players he had. Reggie Jackson, the player option, Dario Saric, the player option, Westbrook, the player option. And then go ahead.
And then also you could go with the draft picks, trading future draft picks and trading all of the future draft pick flexibility for the current young guys that they have had. That was a plan that I was critical of in the moment, that it was new. It was different. It was something that a lot of people tried to credit if it worked, and it is blown up in everybody's face.
Because we got so many like new fans and NBA fans coming in to watch our show with 3,335 people currently watching at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. Hey, Ryan, can I ask you a question? Do you know what the number 9 and 1 means? 8 and 1. I'm sorry, 8 and 1.
8 and 1. No, I don't know what that means.
That would be the record of the Denver Nuggets versus the Los Angeles Lakers in the last 2 playoffs. That's what that would be. So take the L.
You clocked that too?
Man, we got our last take the L on the way out. That sucks.
Jamal Murray made a shot, and actually he made several.
Make a shot.
He made a lot of shots, man. Look, this might be a changing of the guard, but not yet. Like we'll see what happens in these playoffs, and we'll see whether the Lakers can actually get through this thing. Doesn't look like they will.
I will say also, this is a good reminder for just like for general basketball fans. The word dynasty was thrown around a lot after the first title of like they're building a dynasty. And I immediately was like, whoa. In part because like I was aware of like Mike Budenholzer just got, you know what? I just want to say this. the Bucks win the title in 2021 and Mike Budenholzer is fired in 2023. The Nuggets won the title in 2023 and Michael Malone is fired in 2025. That's where we're at in this league, where it's like you get 2 years after winning a title. And by the way, that's gross. I just want to say in general, that's gross. That like you get 2 years after winning the first title in franchise history. That's the leeway that you get. Now, again, there could be other factors that are playing in here that we're not aware of. I do not have any further details. Everybody's predictably trying to deal with the news right now.
And
go ahead.
also too, I think it's important because fans, I realize like they're coming from a much different perspective, but I do think the humanity, as you noted, small like in an effort earlier, like I think people really need to dig, Matt and Ryan, into like how much Malone has stuck up for every player that's come through this building. Even as of last week, when Russ made one of the most colossal mistakes we've seen of a basketball player this year, came to his aid. Jokic, when he was younger, came to his aid. Torrey Craig, when Jamal Murray tore his ACL and said, "Are you guys going to trade me?" It was Michael Malone who made sure he knew he was a part of the team and they wanted him around. Like, Malone has literally had a handprint in everything. Malone himself has gone to Sombor, Serbia, to hand Nikola Jokic an MVP. Do you know how many coaches wouldn't do stuff like that? Like that, he has gone above and beyond for every single one of his players. And another thing about Malone's father obviously was a great coach who died just a couple years ago now. Malone literally like put an imprint into Denver in a way that went beyond just a coach. He cared about the community. Like, we even had video last week of him helping a child who wanted to make the shot in between the timeout and all that. He went out there and cheered him on. Like, Malone literally has been embedded into this culture. And I'd really, truly do, I hope that people, as like you're just kind of going through this process, thinking how the team's going to get better, you can truly appreciate all that he's done and the personality that he's been for Denver and what he meant to the city and what he meant to these players. So I just think like definitely very reactionary, but Matt, obviously you've been around, like I said, longest. Like, there's just not many like him in the league.
There aren't many like him. Like, it is a hard thing that I know a lot of Locked On Nuggets and Pickaxe and Roll listeners have heard my thoughts about Michael Malone over the course of these last few years. Like, I'm always going to be a Michael Malone guy. He's always treated me with respect. He's always treated everybody in the media with respect. And we've gotten to have a pretty good relationship. And he, like, part of that is like, it's going to be natural biases from over here, because when people treat you well and when you like get the time of day from people, that you're going to want to see them succeed. You're going to want to look past things and do what you need to do in order to I don't think I've been that biased in terms of like how good he has done for the organization, though. I will say that like that is pretty evident. There's nothing concerning about that. Like, he has been integral to what's been going on here.
He's the longest coach I've ever covered. He's been here the longest of any coach I've ever covered. And I'll say this, like, I don't know Michael Malone on a personal level. Like, we didn't have that relationship, and I didn't try and build that relationship with him. I have a professional relationship with Michael Malone. I've appreciated his candor, his honesty. It was really cool seeing him. I would talk to him after shoot around a lot in those early days in 2015, 16 and 16, 17, as he tried to kind of mold the team, and to see his thoughts on basketball and the thoughts about like what he cared about. And I will say this, like, man, this is why all the stuff about the young guys always killed me. Cause like Malone really did care about them. Malone invested the time to care about these guys as people, and the players back that up. Cause like I think you always have to kind of go to the players and be like, is this true? Or is he just like fibbing? And like, there were players that he didn't get along with and he didn't do a good enough job building a relationship with, but I don't think any, like the vast majority of them were like that. I think that he is a great coach who will have success wherever he goes next. I think he's going to be successful wherever he goes. I think he'll do the job of building a championship level team again. It's not always true. Sometimes guys get like Mike Budenholzer is an excellent coach, and well, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, and yeah.
I hope Malone takes a good job. Like,
and hey,
not the Suns' job.
Somebody did say, like, are you going to hold Josh responsible? We just talked throughout a ton talking about KSE, but I'll say it again. I think the responsible for KSE here is, again, I don't have a problem with their spending because they helped build a CBA along with the other owners to make it where it doesn't make sense for them to spend. If you spend, you can't have flexibility. You have two choices in the current NBA swipe-up. You can spend or you can have flexibility. And since you have Jokic, honestly, I think the pivot is to get as flexible as possible. Like, this may mean, like, well, I do want to ask you this because I was looking at this today. There was a video that was like criticizing the Nuggets for not having an all-star, which you've criticized. I don't know that that's the right approach, man. I don't know that having an all-star level player is going to get you where you want to go, because if he has any injuries, you're sunk. If he like Jamal has injuries for sure. I'm not saying you don't need change, but I'm saying, like, I think it's better to have a lot of really great players around Jokic all the way through rather than going for like a mega star to put next to him.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a new CBA. So, you know, I've had this conversation on Player Choice a lot. Like, what does the new super team look like? I think that's the Celtics. The Celtics have two, like, stars, and then they have KP, who's a star, and then Derek White, who's a star, is the starriest role player. You know, then you get Drew Holiday, you get Sam Hauser, you get Luke Cornett, and then they just find guys to plug in, and then they play valuable minutes when they play. I think that's probably the best type of build that you want going forward, where you have your preeminent Jason Tatum, and then you just build around them. You got a secondary star in Jaylen Brown, and you just go from there. And so I think with the Nuggets, Matt, some of this is like, and I've talked to you about this before. We had a whole argument last year about like Hakeem Olajuwon being the only approximation to Jokic I can think about, like an all-time great player without an all-time great number two next to him. That's what Jokic's career has been, and I'm saying that's an anomaly. Is that going to stay the same? But if you told me right now, Matt, that the team, they kind of reverse course, now they have 8 guys. They have like 5 legit, like, star in their role guys, and then they have 3 more guys that they can play off the bench that are shining around Jokic, then I think then we're in a different conversation. And that's kind of what, well, to a lesser degree, what the Thunder are. Like, the Thunder, I think they have a preeminent talent. Then they got J-Dub, they got iHeart, they got Caruso, they got Kaysen, they got Chet. But they have an infrastructure of having like elite personnel to fortify what SGA is, both good and bad. So I do think the Nuggets have to take that approach. And as we've talked about all year, Ryan, I don't think that's an iteration of the team. When we said this in the offseason, Ryan, I don't think the iteration of the team best fits that. We predicted they would have trouble, but then all year we've seen the same issues rise up. They don't have the personnel to get it done consistently. And Ryan, for me, I don't even think they necessarily need a high-end all-NBA talent, but they have to do something different than what they're doing now.
Yeah, last thing I'm going to say. Look, this was not the way that anybody thought that this was going, like thought truly that this was going to go at this stage. I think that everybody wanted to let this have time to breathe, especially with the way that the offseason did go. I understand that. Yeah, we had reservations. We had thoughts that we didn't think that they fully did what they were supposed to do. But this is worse than that. And the way that this is kind of fell down the stairs over and over again a couple of times, especially in these last few weeks, I think it's spiraled out of control in a way.
Yeah, it did. The losses are not the losses are not the reason for the problems. The problems are the reason for the losses. And that goes to an organizational and communication standpoint. Mm-hmm. And that's probably what we've been trying to kind of hint at all year, and why I've been like, but they're winning games, but also I know it feels bad. Why does it feel so bad? And like that kind of dynamic. Grace just asked me something over somewhere else and asked me, like, do we think this had anything to do with Jamal's status? And my answer is, I don't know. Like, I don't know yet. What I would say is it wouldn't surprise me if it's like, it's not good. Based off of like the messaging coming from the team. And in that case, it's like, we're, the season's not over, but also it's kind of over if Jamal's done and not coming back.
So if this is another year where Jamal has not really made it to the end in full measure, everything is on the table at this point. already was on the table, and the KSC absolutely it made it happen in terms of turning this into, hey, Malone is gone, Booth is gone. Now, as we mentioned, things are going to be a lot different in this organization going forward. The feeling is going to be a lot different. The messaging is going to be a lot different. The expectations are going to be the same, or at least I think potentially revitalized in terms of what everybody's expecting for.
All right, that's got to do it for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us on this breaking news episode. We'll be back tomorrow as more news comes out and we're able to talk to more people and try and find out more about this story and what this means for the Denver Nuggets. You can check me out on the Zach Lowe podcast, the Zach Lowe Show here coming up in a little bit. Thanks for joining us. Mile High Sports, Pickaxe and Roll podcasts. Swipe a Cam on Twitter and YouTube. My thanks to Michael Malone for a great 10 years of providing insight for the Denver Nuggets. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.